be the one covering the live today. So, guys, today we'll be learning how to start coding. So, if you're a fresher or if you're someone who's just interested into getting into coding, then this live is for you. All right. So, in this session, we'll basically be discussing a lot of different topics that will pertain to how you can start with coding. All right, guys. Now, we always do this for our YouTube regulars, but if you're new here, please stick till the end because there is a surprise for you. All right. So now let's take a quick look at our agenda. So in our session today, we'll be discussing different topics, and these are the different topics. First, why learn coding? Then we'll move on to how you can start coding for yourself. How will you start? Then third, we'll discuss which languages should you start with. Which language should you choose? Then we'll discuss how you can choose a project. We'll discuss what this particular topic is. And then we'll discuss the learning path. What is the learning path you should take? And finally, we will conclude by discussing what are the different kinds of jobs you can get in this particular field. So, guys, let's go ahead and start the session. So, our first question here is our first discussion topic: why learn coding? So, this is a question for you as well as me. Why should you learn coding? And do you really want to learn? So let's actually discuss the story. So we have a person, and this person wants to earn a very high salary. They don't know what they want to do in life, but they just know they want to learn, they want to earn a very high salary. So they decide to become a software engineer or software developer because they heard that it pays a lot. Then there is a person who's just interested in coding and in developing, in programming. So they take up this particular field of coding, programming, just because they're interested in this field. And then there's this third person. He is he has already been working in a particular field. Suppose he's a business analyst. Now he's been working since the 90s or the 80s. And during that time, they didn't use any such special algorithms to think about the data and make powerful decisions. But these days, the market has to change, and he has to adapt with the market to incorporate coding into his own working culture so that he can make better decisions based on the data that is being collected. You know how data science works, right? So all these three people have the same goal in mind. They want to become better at coding. They want to become coders or programmers. They want to become programmers. At least they want to learn what coding is or how to work with coding. So these can be few of the reasons why you would want to become a coder. Maybe you want to get a really high paying job. Maybe you're just interested in coding. Maybe you just learning coding to adapt with the with the market, adapt to the market, adapt to the change that's happening to the market. So you should ask yourself, why do you want to learn coding? Now this is important. You should ask this question to yourself because if you don't have the motive of your learning in mind properly, then you will fall off the horse. Once you start learning coding, if you see come across an error, then if you're not able to solve that error, then you stop doing it because you don't have any proper motivation. So make sure that you have a proper motivation in your mind when you start off by learning what coding is. So ask yourselves this question: why do you want to learn coding? Alright, guys, now let's discuss how you can start coding by yourself. Okay, so you can start coding off, you know, basically by figuring out what you want to do. Alright, so let's discuss this. So now you've asked yourself that what is your motive to become a coder? What is you? Why do you want to program? Now you have to go ahead with the next step, that is to learn how to start coding. So coding, this is a very generic term, how to start coding. It's a very vast field. Computer science is a very vast field. There are so many different fields you can get into. So you have to narrow it down. So, this is like problem solving. You have a very big problem. You divide into smaller parts and then solve it. So similarly with this question of how to start coding, you need to divide it into a smaller component. So, with the question how to start coding, you should first go ahead and narrow it down to where do you want to code or how do you want to code. So, first you need to figure out what do you want to do with coding. Do you want to develop an application? Do you want to make a bot? Do you want to develop a website? What kind of thing do you want to do? So, once you figure that out, you should go ahead and learn what are the languages and the tools that are required for the particular thing. Let me give you an example, like of the person who is just interested in coding, but he's never got into coding. He's just heard about how hacking is so cool, and he wants to get into coding. So he starts off by first deciding what kind of project he wants to do. So he wants to do a project where he's going to be making a recommendation system on a website. But the thing is, this recommendation system does not use any powerful algorithms or something. It's just for him to share a few details with his family because the family lives far apart. So he just wants to share a few details with them. So to do that, he's just made this application. So see, it has a practical use, this particular project. And while doing this project, he's learning a lot of things. He's learning how to code a website. He's learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, database technology, a lot of different things. Now, this is how I recommend you should go ahead with it too. You should first figure out what you want to do, then figure out what language and tool you need for it, then learn the basics of that language. Like, all the different basics of a particular language, you should learn that and then move ahead and make the application. Now, a few, disclaimer here. When you're going to make this application, make sure that the application you're making is a very simple one, because when you start off, always start with baby steps. Because if you start with something gigantic, if you want to make like the whole Facebook website, then you'll obviously fall off the first step itself because you don't know where to start from. So rather than making such a huge website, what you can do is you can just start by creating a small website where you basically can create accounts and post statuses. That's it. So this is how I suggest you guys should start off by should start coding. All right. So first, that is figure out what you want to do. So let me give you an example. So you can do a lot of things. You can make a small game. So if you're into gaming and you want to make a particular small you want to get into the gaming industry, you want to become a game developer, then you should start off by making a very small game app, not an apps per se, like a particular like a snake ladders, snake game, the one we had on our Nokia mobiles, like that sort of a game, or very simple one like um, the defender game where you're basically shooting aliens from below. And if you're not that, then you can go ahead and make a web application or a mobile application, a very simple one per se. Like very small things. In mobile app, if you're gonna make a mobile app, I would recommend not going for a mobile app right now. But if you're really interested in making a mobile app, then you can go ahead and make a very simple app that just opens up and tells you what the time is. So that way. So then this way, first figure out what you really want to do as a project. Then figure out what are the languages and tools you can use. So there are a lot of languages out there that you can use. Like let me give you you have Python, C++, JavaScript, and you have similarly tools with them that that you have to use with them. You can use your IDEs, that are integrated development environments, basically where you write the code, and you need compilers and all those tools. So figure out what do you need with all of this. So to give you a better idea, let's take an example of you want to make a web application. So you've decided that you're going to be making that web application where you're basically going to be displaying time of all the family members that are living across the globe. And then you decide to choose a particular language. You go ahead using JavaScript because that is what's used to create the front end. You use JavaScript, HTML, CSS to make the front end, and then you decide to use a particular tool. Maybe you're using Visual Studio Code as the place where you write the JavaScript code. So that is the tool you're using. Then you learn the basics of that language. Now JavaScript will have a lot of different basics, but it has some coding basics also. Like you have your loops, like for loops, while loops, then you have your if statements, then you have variables, then you have functions and arrays. So these are like a kind of the basics of the particular language. Not just the language, these are fundamentals of any language. When you're working with any language, you'll have loops, if statements, variables, and functions and arrays. And similarly, that example of making that website, you're learning JavaScript, so you'll have to learn these, and then you have to learn the basics of the language itself. You'll have to learn a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, a little bit of JavaScript, and once you learn all of those, the fundamentals of all of those things, then you can go ahead and create the application that you want. Now and then create a basic application. So now he knows what he wants to create, and he's creating it then. So the process of creation, when he's creating the web application, he'll be learning a lot of things. He'll be learning how to create functions in JavaScript. He'll be learning how to place certain things using CSS, how to color them, how to make it more fancy looking, and how to divide the content using HTML. So a lot of different things you'll be learning when you're creating this application. Now remember, a very important factor here is that you should not go for something that is complicated. You should go for something that is very simple. If you go for very simple, then yeah, in the starting it feels like, oh, I'm not doing anything, but you're actually learning. So if you complete this application right, then you should give yourself a pat on the back because you've done something amazing. You started from not knowing anything in coding to create a basic application. Yeah, that's a good step. Once you've learned this, then you should go ahead for different other applications. Like once you completed your first project, do a second project. This time when you're doing a second project, make sure that it's a little bit more complicated. Again, not so complicated as making a whole Facebook website. Make it a little bit more complicated so that you can work with it and learn new things with it. So the whole cycle repeats. You define an aim again. You choose the particular language. Well, you already chosen the language. You choose what are the libraries you're going to use, all the different tools you're going to use, and you're going to learn how to use them. So this way, slowly doing projects, you learn how to become a coder. So guys, that is how you're going to start coding. All right. So let me just briefly tell you like how you should choose what kind of language, what kind of tools you need to use. So all those things. Let me just brief you on that. So when it comes to which language should you choose, not just for working with your project. Maybe you're thinking, okay, so I've understood this guy's way, but I just want to start with a language. I've heard of all these different languages: C++, Java, Python. So which language should I choose? So that really depends because there are a lot of different factors here. So you have a lot of languages out there. You have Python, Kotlin, C++, C Sharp, JavaScript, Swift, Java, Ruby, PHP, Node.js, R. There are so many different